Welcome, friends, to GameMasters Studio, where we talk shop about running tabletop role-playing games. With us today is Jared and Ed, with your host, Jerry.
Hello and welcome to GameMasters Studio, where we'll be talking about tabletop role-playing games, tips and tricks that you can do for your games at home to help kind of increase your experience and help you out to have a little bit of fun. Today we're going to be talking about low ability scores, since we're still kind of in the pre-game planning phases, and some of the options that you have and how to work with your players on that. My name is Jerry, aka Frieden, and I'm host and moderator today. And with me in the studio, I have Jared, aka dm.f, proprietor of Mad Doc Designs, creator of the World of Wrath, and semi-professional dungeon master, and Ed.
Just so you guys know, the mini fridge is empty.
All right, so we are discussing low ability scores today. We've discussed character creation, getting set up, starting to plan, and sometimes the character creation doesn't wind up with characters that your players are necessarily happy with. And one of those big issues can be that their stats just aren't as high as they would like. Now, everybody likes to, at some point, have fun with playing the super-powered, really successful alpha, ace at everything characters with the high stats, the high numbers, who never fail. But sometimes the dice just don't work out that way.
Nope.
How do you guys approach it when a player looks at this sheet, looks at his numbers, and goes, these just aren't going to work for me?
Well, I mean, as a GM, you do, of course, and I know we're going to touch on this later. You want to tell them it's not the end of the world, but sometimes they roll, maybe they roll a bunch of stats, and the best they get, using kind of D&D statistics, is the best they get maybe like a 14, and everything else between 8 and 12,
And for anybody at home that may not have Dungeons & Dragons experience, a starting stat would generally run from 3 to 18, with the average being 10 to 11.
Yeah. And most people will consider, one or two good stats to be okay. So something around the 15, 16 range or better. You get two of those, most people will be happy with that. But, if you get nothing in that range, some people can be upset by that. I guess one thing you could do, if everyone else has fairly decent stats, you could tell the player, hey, take that lowest roll and turn it into 17, 18. That way, okay, we're not going to change the roll completely, but I'm going to give you that one stat so your character's good at the one thing they're supposed to be good at.
Yeah, I do know that the Warhammer system has a built-in optional rule for players to take their lowest stat and turn it into an average stat instead. Yeah. So it doesn't break it by saying, okay, here I'm going to give you something really good, but it does help bring up the overall base level. Yeah,
some GMs will say, well, turn your highest stat, into a better stat, or say your lower stat into a better stat. That Warhammer one sounds pretty interesting. You can make it, at least average.
Yeah. I know if I look as a DM, because I have the experience, systems that I know, I can look at some of the stats and compare a player's stats to other players before the game even starts. Once the game starts, your stats are your stats. But before it starts, I've had it and I've looked at it and I'm like, these are significantly lower. Yeah. I've had a player that rolled very poorly and their highest stat wound up being, I think it was a 12. It was just, everything was just, they were looking at penalties across the boards, and I allowed them to re-roll, just start from scratch and re-roll everything. I think that's...
Yeah. Re-rolls are certainly something you can do.
It's an option, but it is kind of a scorched earth option. We're just going to blast it and start over. Yeah. But sometimes it's the fastest and easiest way, and sometimes that'll give you a really happy player, because if they're complaining about their stats, okay, start over. Well, that should make all of their issues go away.
Yeah, I usually tell them to suck it up, Sally. No. I'm actually...
Specifically when Sally is complaining about her low scores.
Right. Damn it, Sally.
I'm a fan of average to lowest scores, but but I want my players to be happy, like you said. And I'm also, like Jerry has said several times in the past, if I want you dead, you're dead. So your stats really don't matter to me. It's just about keeping your players happy. So, there have been plenty of times where it's turn your 9 into a 16, okay, or everyone else in the group rolled really well when I wasn't looking, and it's how that always works.
It's a proven fact of gaming. Anything that blocks the line of sight from the DM to the dice will statistically improve the numbers that you roll.
Yeah, while I wasn't looking, everyone else rolled really well, and then I was paying attention to you roll, and you rolled like crap. So maybe I'll let you re-roll everything. Maybe I'll let you just take a couple, have a good, turn a couple of your bad stats into good stats. There's a lot of ways to approach it. I mean, like you guys have touched on a few. I'm regurgitating a couple of those, but it really just kind of depends on what you want to do. But again, just remember as the GM that you have that power. You can let them re-roll. You can just give them a good straight stat. You can just look at the whole table and go, what? You know what? You guys can't have rolled all 18s while this guy over here rolled all 8s. Everyone just have 14s across the board. I'm not saying that that's a good idea. I'm just saying that you have the power to do that.
Right. Yeah. The DM can say anything.
So just do whatever you think you need to do to make sure that not only is everyone kind of, that everyone's happy, but also that everyone's kind of try to keep them on the same kind of playing field. And that's where, there's the advantage of like point buy and the array system, which we touched on in a previous episode.
Yeah.
That keeps everything within a compact cluster. You don't have to worry about those wild rolls where he's got 3 18s and he's got 3 3s.
When you're dealing with an array, everybody's got the same stats, so there's no room to really complain there. And point buy is about balancing, and if somebody has a low stat, it means they had to make that choice.
Yeah, they did that to themselves.
I think that as far as adjusting poor stats, if as a DM you feel the need to, I think personally that you're better off taking the low stats and making them average, rather than taking some of the good stats and making it a little bit better.
Right.
Because when you bring it up, you bring it to kind of that average person, and a lot of the heroic stories are about average people overcoming extraordinary things. Die Hard wouldn't have been an interesting movie if it was John Rambo running around doing that, as opposed to
McClane.
John McClane,
yes. So
next time you're going to use a reference, you better know the statistics.
I had it, and I was like, "That's a
you
different."
Almost got beat down by the internet there.
I had McClane, and I'm like, "No, that's a different Bruce Willis movie," but I can't remember which one it is.
Yeah, I mean,
the other Die Hard movies.
I would argue, if you were going to make McClane as a character, he doesn't have bad stats.
Yeah,
but he certainly doesn't have Rambo stats. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, right. He's supposed to represent average Joe Cop.
Exactly.
He makes some good decisions, but that comes down to the role playing and not down to the stats.
Yeah. And he proves that fact. And I think this is what you were trying to touch on. Stats don't matter. He proves that fact. Yeah,
stats don't make the character.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're right. They don't make the character.
Right.
Yes, if you want to be the overpowering fighter guy and your highest stats of 14. You're really not going to have an overpowering strength.
No, but you can be the character I've seen those fighters. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to commit my life to. And I'm always going to try, and I'm never going to give up.
Exactly.
And that makes for a wonderful character.
The Gattaca character.
Yeah.
Gattaca. Yeah, great reference on that one. Ha 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 ha. Thank you. Half the internet is going, what? Yeah. what movie is that?
I've heard of the film.
Now they know it's a movie because you mentioned it. That's for our youngins out there. Gattaca is a movie starring Ethan Hawke and Jude Law. And the idea is one of them is supposedly born perfect and the other one is not, but
twins.
One who's for your even older audience. But yeah, I mean that just shows that the stats aren't really what make the character. You can still have an interesting character at a unique time. And one other thing I'd kind of like to point out with that is just because you don't have good stats, one thing that can outbalance that is higher levels. I don't know how many NPCs I've made that haven't really had the great stats, but I'm like, I'm going to make this guy 10th level. I don't care.
Yeah. And
it ends up being a challenge.
And many games have built-in mechanics. As you improve, you can increase your stats. You can build it up. One of my DMs held very strongly to the belief that leveling up is a large chunk of what makes the game fun. You start out at a given point, and as you progress, you get better at what you do. You become a better, stronger, faster, smarter character through your experiences. And witnessing that growth and being able to eventually overcome challenges you couldn't at first is part of what makes role-playing enjoyable.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, it's better to start from, especially like in D&D, Like you have, that's, what we kind of go back to, the D20 system. It has that built-in, array there. But and another reason why I like 5th edition, where you're capping out 20, unless you're playing a special class with a special rule, you can't go any higher than 20. So, okay, well, you figured out how to bug the system where you start with an 18 or 20, then you have nowhere to go.
Right.
Okay, you're the big bad fighter that's starting at a 20. Well, you started off perfect. You have nowhere to grow.
It's all downhill from here.
I think it's much more interesting to see the game be about the characters growing and evolving as people and as characters and their stats along with it. Like you said, being the fighter that starts with like a 12 strength, a little bit above average, but nowhere compared to like the epic heroes of Tale,
right.
But to striving for that, again, that Gattaca reference where like the whole point is like, Ethan Hawke just will not accept the limitations that have been put on him at birth and just striving to eventually like overcome those.
Hard work and training always trumps natural talent.
Look at Batman.
No, there's your obscure reference for you.
Yeah.
Not Batman, the other one.
Yeah.
So, so you start with a 12, but by the time you're level 20, when your character's capping out in D&D, you have a 20 strength. You're awesome. You have gone from average-ish Joe Schmo to the almighty Zod. You know what I mean? Kneel before Zod.
Hercules. 0 to hero.
So it makes...
Yeah, I know I didn't like the Disney one either.
But it just makes for a much more interesting game. So, that's leading into where we're kind of going with this. We're like having average or even below average stats.
It's not the end of the world.
It's not the end of the world.
No.
And for me, again, personally, I think it's much more interesting to see those low stats because they make for a lot more role playing. Because having high stats makes for good rolling, ROLL.
Right.
But having low stats makes for good role playing, ROLE.
Yeah, you have to role play that low stat. A lot of people like to go, like if they have a low intelligence, they like to use, the kind of the dumb brute idea, and that's fine. That can be it, but make that actually part of your character. Actually go around and have conversations as this low intelligence person. He doesn't have to fly off the handle and get in a fight every time someone says something nasty to him. Maybe he doesn't know they said something nasty to him.
Yeah, maybe it goes right over their head. Yeah,
exactly. So, these can make for fun experiences. I had a bard one time that I played, and he was a kind of a teacher, historian kind of bard, more on the educated than physical side. He had a 6 strength, and I loved role-playing that 6 strength. He couldn't carry a damn thing, couldn't really help out, but I had him every time. The heroes needed to push a door open, he was right there helping, because technically he has a weight capacity that he can push, so he can help. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, everyone's looking at him like, why are you doing this?
I'm part of the team.
I'm part of the team, fellas.
But you go on you have like, say you have the very powerful wizard with a really low wisdom and have kind of like that absent-minded professor kind of moment.
Exactly.
Like, oh my god, I have a spell for this. Flip, 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 flip. Kaboom, fireball. Our party's in there. Oops.
I actually had a specific example I was going to bring up, and you kind of referenced the same material indirectly. In that I was going to say, a low character stat can be very defining for a character, looking specifically at the character of Raistlin Majir from the Dragonlance Chronicles. He was a powerful wizard, eventually, but he was willing to sacrifice everything. Primarily, he sacrificed his health. He was a sickly child, but he wouldn't give up. He always kept his determination. He knew that his magic and his brains could overcome his physical limitations. And even though he's the character that occasionally had to be carried, that was sometimes coughing up blood, so clearly he had a very low constitution. Although if you get into the backstories and read the annotations, the original character that Raistlin was based on actually had just slightly below average constitution. It was played up heavily in the books, but it made a low stat that's critical for survival into a defining feature.
Right.
Jared's reference there was a little bit to another character out of the series, Fizban, who was a wizard. No spoilers here, but he was a wizard who was very high on the intellect, but wasn't always sure, wasn't always making the best ideas. Specifically, there was a case where very near to his introduction, he decided to get the group out of the jail cell that they were in by fireballing the jail cell door while everybody was still inside this tiny packed jail cell.
Yeah.
Not a great choice, but it made the character interesting, and it was really defined by that low stat.
Yeah, in other ways you can do it too. If you have low physical stats as a combat character, unless there's regulations on, can I carry this weapon if or this armor, based on my stats, that's going to be one thing. But, if your character, you can still play a fighter with a low strength. Maybe he's just, maybe he's a new, maybe he's, was not a fighter for very long. Maybe he is exactly what a level 1 character should be, an initiate of some sort. So, the idea of low stats, even low physical stats, you can play those up, Low con, you could have your character cough every once in a while in character because he's a little sickly. Or get the sniffles or something, make something up random for him.
I actually went for one of my characters that I had a lot of fun with, who had very low stats. His constitution was average, but his strength and dexterity were low. And what I did was I made him an older character. This is a guy who had a life, became a farmer, had a family, had a backstory, all this stuff happened, and now he's going out adventuring. So he was past his prime.
Right.
And it made for a very memorable character because I'm going to go find, adventuring to do, and adventurers are traditionally young people starting out. Mm-hmm. And this guy's older, and they start to, they look to him. He had a high wisdom because he had lived life and he had seen all that. But at the same time, he's like, oh, I know just about as much of this as you do.
Right.
And, using the lower stats made the character interesting by giving me the idea, how do I have a character who has a very high wisdom, but a very, low intelligence, low strength, low dexterity, actually rolled very poorly, but had a lot of fun with a low stat character.
Right.
Yeah, it teaches you to think around the problem too. Like, say, okay, I want to be a fighter, but for, whatever reason, I have an okay intelligence, I have an okay dex, but I have a poor strength. Okay, well, take advantage of your strengths, or at least your non-weaknesses. And okay, I'm going to be a dex-based kind of fighter. I'm going to use, finesse weapons, and I'm going to think around the problem. I'm going to be an intelligent fighter. I'm I'm going to take advantage of, be more on the strategic side of being a fighter. Like, I'll go take advantage of flanking points and do this and do that.
Right.
Or he's using ranged weapons and hanging back, surveying the battle, seeing what's going on, giving guidance.
Yeah, and just kind of being like the whole David versus, the Goliath kind of thing. And just I might be physically weaker than you, but that doesn't make me less, less strong than you as a person. I have my own strengths, whether, even though it may not be strength, as, as a stat itself.
Yeah, as you level up, you're going to naturally get stronger anyway. You're going to get more abilities. But also, here's the other thing. If your players have low stats, and either whether you do this on purpose or they just kind of roll it, that might actually be a blessing in disguise because now they might actually run away from things.
Yeah, they're fragile. They have weaknesses.
Yeah,
they know they can be hurt. Yeah, yeah, and that's probably the biggest thing that makes me like lower and even below average stats.
Most player characters hate running away from things. They see a battle, they want to run right after it. They think they can take it. Mm-hmm. They think, oh, the GM put that there, I can take it. Okay, yeah. Which
we only encounter things that are appropriate to our level.
Right. But this is a good way. That's even if it is appropriate to your level. You guys have low stats. The CR5 might be closer to a CR7 to you guys. You might not be able to take it.
Yeah, also, again, because a lot of players have maybe too much faith in their DMs. They just assume that if you're going to present it to me, then I can kill it.
Right.
You're all beat up. You've had 3 fights today. You haven't had a chance for a short rest. You're all beat up. You're low on hit points, regardless of your stats. There are situations that I've seen so many situations where the group should just run away, but they will stand and fight to the last man.
But who's always the ones that make it out of that? The guys with the high stats. The really high statted strength and constitution barbarian is going to be fine. The high statted fighter is going to be fine. The high statted mage with lots of spells and good DCs, they're fine. The high statted rogue with that high dex, they're fine. Characters with low statistics aren't going to make it out of that as well on that third fight when they're all beat up and they haven't had a rest.
They're not going to push the limits as well because they know that they're fragile. They know that they're mortal.
Exactly.
So, and again, that's why I do prefer having characters with lower stats so they don't feel godly. They need to feel mortal. They need to feel fragile. They need to know that I can step on them. They are an ant. Because
Right.
even though I can, at any given time, no matter what game, no matter what stats, they are always an ant to me because I can step on them if I want them to, if I want to.
Also, coming up for a future episode, we will be talking about when it is appropriate to kill a player character.
Yes.
Oh, I thought we were talking about those ants again.
When to step on that.
No, we're talking about ants with low stats.
Well, not going to find a lot of those.
But when the player doesn't know that they're the ant, that's the problem because they walk up to everything and they'll go at it and then they'll be all like huffy and puffy if they do go down. You know what I mean? So it's just nice to see players just like stop thinking of this as a disposable character and think of this as yourself.
Right.
Like this is you. Like you need that's where like immersion really comes in too. Like which is another thing that we're going to talk about in a future episode. But like where I go for a lot of immersion. And like in my Contagion game that Jerry played, like I encouraged low stats. They didn't get to reroll a lot of stuff. They didn't get to reroll ones. They didn't get to roll 4 dice. They rolled 3d6, and that's what you got.
Yep.
And that's all there is to it. So like there was a lot of average statted characters with some even lower stats. I think Jerry had one of the lowest statted characters that there was. And then on top of that, like pushing the immersion because it was supposed to be kind of like a thriller horror-ish kind of game, and it kind of helped convey that feel like I'm mortal, I can die. I mean, killing about 17 characters throughout the game helped too.
Yeah.
But they were mortals, and they and I also, to help encourage that right off the bat, like they all made 3 characters right off the bat too. Like these are disposable. I'm going to kill you if I need to kill you, so like you better play smart.
And immersion can really help with that. Looking at my stats and saying, okay, I have 3/4 of my hit points remaining. I have a couple spells left. I think I can handle this. Is one thing, but then thinking on the immersion side, like, man, I have been underfed for the past 2 days. I haven't slept in a good bed in a week. My arm is bugging me. I think I took a bad hit from that mace. My armor straps are digging in. I'm tired. I'm sore. I really don't want to get into a fight right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and, a lot of that's just role-playing, but some of that can be kind of mimicked with these low-static characters. But I like what you brought up, actually. You mentioned that there was a horror element to one of the games there. Mm-hmm. That's actually kind of an idea of where you might want your characters to have low stats.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I like you get 3d6.
Exactly.
Roll it. I know a lot of games I've been in. It's like, well, roll 4d6 and drop the lowest. You can re-roll ones, or you can re-roll 1s and 2s.
Yeah.
Roll 7 stats, but only take your highest 6. They try to really work around and some of that's working around bad rolls, but some of that's really pushing for good stats.
Right.
But if I just say roll 3d6 6 times, like old school, like you're going to come up with some average to poor stats there.
Exactly. And it makes the character disposable for a possible horror game. I ran kind of a horror game once. I had them all start with a 6 as a base stat. I think it was 6, might have been 8. And I just had them roll 1d6 and add it to it. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's your stat. That's all you get. You weren't going to get any better than a 12 or 14 most of the time. You might get as low as a 7. And I just ran them through a quick kind of horror style quick run through.
Yep.
And you have to go to the other side there. You're going to have characters with low stats who are going to survive.
Yeah.
And you can sometimes hold those up as examples of this is how to make low stats work. I had a player who we were playing, it was a Star Wars game, and he played a Wookiee, Chewbacca, for those of you who are less familiar with Star Wars. And he had a strength of 12 and every other stat was a 10. Or he had a strength of 20 and every other stat was a 10 because Wookiees are extremely strong. And he's just like, these stats are awful. I'm not going to be able to do anything with this. And I pulled out my character sheet. This was the old adventurer that I talked about earlier. I pulled out the character sheet and I slid it over to him. I'm like, this is... and I gave the character's name. Take a look at his stats. And they're actually worse off than the stats you had. But this was a good character. He was amazing. He was a hero. He was something special.
Yeah.
Stats don't make the character.
Yeah. And
There's
really
more to a character than the numbers on your paper.
Exactly. As a GM, you really have to plug that to your players.
Yeah, you got to push. You got to and every group's different. And this comes back to player styles, which again we talked about in a previous episode. Yeah. Go review that so you know what your players like, what they what they're looking for. But if you have the right group of people, because this isn't going to work with all groups. If you have a group of fighters and optimizers, they might not really dig the whole, like, you're going to force low stats on me.
Right.
But if you have more on the role player storyteller side, then they're going to be like, oh, as long as you have the conversation with them, like, I'm looking for low stats. This is why I think it's a great opportunity. Then they'll be right on board with you. I would think, like, all right, cool. Okay, so how about I give, this is something that's been kind of like tickling in my brain on the idea of doing like another horror kind of game, is giving certain stats, like, okay, for your intelligence, you can roll 4d6 reroll ones.
Right.
Like, but for your strength, you're going to roll 3d6. But, like, kind of encourage, like, you're going to be a fairly intelligent, if not above average intelligent person, so that way you can think through, because I want you to think through these problems that I'm going to present to you, but I don't want you to rely on your physical stats.
Right.
I don't want you to try to fight your way through it. There is a video game I can't think of now, but it's a horror game. It's a horror survival game, and there is no combat button. There is no way to fight. It is a problem-solving... it's called Outlast. That's what it's called. Outlast. So all you can do is think your way through a problem. If a monster's coming, you hide. You turn off your flashlight. You hold your breath. You pray to God. The monster leaves through... monster leaves. You try to sneak out, and you try to... You survive. Period. There's no... Well, I didn't do very well, so I guess I'll shoot the thing in the face a bunch of times. No, there's no gun. There's not even a punch button. That's it.
Wow.
So, like, kind of having that kind of thought process, like, again, it's something that's been kind of tickling in the back of my head, is like, roll this for this stat, roll this for this stat, roll this, or like maybe even like, okay, we'll roll this for your intelligence stat, your mental stats, roll this for your physical stats. Okay, 3d6, no pluses, no minuses, no rerolls for your physical stats. Roll 46 reroll 1s and 2s, drop the lowest for your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And I want to see what you guys can do thinking through the problem.
Right.
I don't want you to fight through the problem. I want you to think through the problem. A little bit more of like a realism kind of thing. Like, okay, you're not going to have high hit points. Almost like Call of Cthulhu. I don't know if you played Call of Cthulhu, which was D20 based.
Yep.
But I've actually, that's one of the few games other than D&D that I've DM'd. I've DM'd Call of Cthulhu and Exalted and D&D. But so my Call of Cthulhu games, I love those. Sadly, very few people would live through one session, but I think a lot of that was kind of like learning the system. I was kind of too D&D-ish, like throwing a little bit too much at some of the players and not realizing that I needed to back off a little bit. But still, the games are, I thought, like, even though like almost no player or character would live through a whole session or live through more than 2 sessions, all the players would just enjoy the crap out of the game. Just because it's so much different from D&D, where like, you are a very fragile mortal. Yeah. There's a touch of magic, but if you use magic, it makes you go cray-cray, It's a completely different system.
Yeah, it's a system built on the idea that everyone's basically average.
Yeah, everyone's a mortal human. They're not a heroic dwarf. They're not, the demigod half-dragon.
And, there are systems out there, if it comes down to it and your players aren't happy with stat rolls or whatever, if stats become a big issue, there's always point-buy systems, like White Wolf, or Vampire the Masquerade, Werewolf the Gathering, whatever you're more familiar with, where you're like, okay, well, here's the number of points you're assigned for each of your stat blocks. You can put so many points in. You can even buy better stats if you want, but they're going to make that decision, like you mentioned earlier, as to what stats are important to them, because they might want those extra free points for something else.
Yeah, and that's kind of the whole, kind of like what I mentioned with optimizing is like, over-specialize and you breed weakness. Now, same thing applies to point-buy systems that are designed to maintain balance. You can push that balance and say, well, I want to be really good at fighting, but then you're going to be weaker at everything else.
Right.
Although players are very resourceful, they're always going to find ways to compensate for that. And as a DM, you just need to learn to roll with it. Don't punish them necessarily for having low stats.
No. In fact, I wanted to touch on that for just a second. You may even want to reward them. Not specifically for that, but after a couple of sessions, they're playing out these low stats. They're actually role-playing through it. Give them a little something extra, like a unique item or something that, doesn't necessarily say, hey, thanks for playing with the low stats, here's a gift. But let them know that, see, you can still be a successful player with these statistics.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like Jerry said, don't ever punish your players. You shouldn't really be punishing your players for anything unless they're, purposely being
attacking the integrity of the group.
Yeah,
Yes.
which I'm quite sure we're going to approach difficult players in another episode as well.
We do have, it's for bonus episodes, we have dealing with problem players and dealing with player problems.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, even in those situations, I don't think you should be punishing, just dealing with would be the correct term.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, low stats are not the end of the world. They're not a bad thing. I think that they can actually be a great positive force in your game, especially in the right type of game, if used appropriately.
And I also think for anybody out there who is very against low stats, who thinks like I need to have those high stats to survive, I'd actually like to challenge you to take a character with below average stats, play something for the sake of having fun, have some fun with it, and see that the low stats aren't as bad as you think.
Yeah, and I think that's a good mindset to have going in. Like anytime you're forced to play a character with low stats, or you choose to play a character with low stats, the point is to go approach it with having fun. You're not approaching this to win. Obviously,
Right.
if you're approaching this quote-unquote to win, you're going to want the best stats that you can. But if you're approaching this to have fun, which is how I think you should typically approach all games, but if you're approaching it to purely with the mindset of just have fun, then you can have a ball with some low stats. I mean, you can just go crazy with it. Have fun, like play the retarded fighter, play the absent-minded professor, play the klutzy rogue. How often do you see that? Like, I'm smart. I can think my way through the burglary, through the crime, but I'm not exactly the lightest on my toes. I tend to bump into things. Maybe you're kind of a girthy kind of thief. You got a little bit of a gut that knocks statues over every now and then. But just going outside the box and thinking odd like that, you can have some really interesting and very memorable characters.
And you know what? If you've got the bad stats, they wind up hurting you too much. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to get to make a new character.
Yeah.
So that's always another step on the road, and you can always have another adventure. So we are out of time. We're going to be wrapping this up. Definitely feel free to follow us on Facebook. Sign up for our message boards, GameMasterStudio.proboards.com. You can follow us on Twitter at GMS Studios. We do have a new episode posted here every week, every Tuesday. So come back next time we're in the studio for some more information, and we will see you then.
Bye.